My name is Laura Simmons. I'm 29 years old. At 4:36 on a rainy Friday afternoon, I came home from rehab with a plastic discharge folder in my lap, a 90-day recovery plan in my purse, and the dangerous little hope that my family might be gentle with me. They were not. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not home. Not the vanilla candle my mother always burned in the hallway. Not laundry detergent, coffee, dust, or the faint lavender sachet I kept in my dresser drawer because my grandmother used to tuck one into every suitcase before a trip. Bleach. The house smelled like bleach. Sharp, cold, and wrong. My father carried my duffel bag from the car without looking at me. My mother walked ahead, keys jangling, shoulders tight, already rehearsing something in her head. My younger sister, Brianna, stood in the living room doorway with her arms folded, wearing the expression she reserved for people she believed were beneath her, but still useful for family drama. I stepped inside. My legs felt weak. 32 days of inpatient treatment had changed my body. I had gained back some weight. My hands no longer shook in the morning. My skin looked less gray. My head felt clearer than it had in 2 years, and that clarity made everything sharper. The missing shoe rack. The empty coat hooks. The hallway table stripped bare. The framed photo of me and Brianna at Lake Michigan gone from the wall. I turned toward the stairs. "Where's my jacket?" My mother, Denise Simmons, did not answer. That told me before she did. I walked up the stairs slowly, one hand on the banister, my discharge folder pressed against my chest. My bedroom door was open. That was wrong too. I always closed it. Even before treatment. Even when things were bad. Even when my life was messy. Even when I was not proud of the person I had become. I closed my bedroom door. I stood in the doorway. My room was almost empty. Not cleaned, not organized, emptied. The bed was stripped down to the mattress pad. My dresser drawers hung open like mouths. The closet doors were pushed wide. The bookshelf was bare, except for one cracked picture frame face down on the bottom shelf. My desk had been cleared of notebooks, pens, insurance forms, recovery workbooks, old letters, the framed photo of my grandmother, the jewelry box she gave me when I turned 18, and the little ceramic fox I bought during my first sober week, because my counselor told me I should choose one small object that reminded me I could survive. Gone. My clothes were gone, my shoes, my winter coat, my journals, my college diploma, the gray cardigan I wore when I needed to feel less exposed, the blue dress I bought for interviews, the box of letters from Grandma, the folder with my medical records, insurance papers, and therapy worksheets, everything. For a moment, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. I turned around. My mother stood behind me in the hallway. She had tears in her eyes, but not the kind that meant sorrow, the kind that meant she'd already decided she was the victim of my reaction. "What did you do?" I asked. Brianna appeared beside her. "We helped you." My voice came out thin. "Where are my things?" Mom clasped her hands. "Laura, we had to make some hard choices while you were away." I stared at her. Dad came up the stairs behind them, heavy footsteps, avoiding my eyes. "What hard choices?" Brianna answered. "We donated most of it." The room moved. Not physically, inside me. Something shifted, dropped, and cracked. "You donated my clothes?" "Not just clothes," Brianna said, like she was proud of being thorough. "We cleared out the old energy." Old energy. She had learned that phrase from online wellness videos and used it whenever she wanted cruelty to sound spiritual. I looked at my mother. "My belongings?" Mom swallowed. It was tough love. There it was. The phrase people use when they want harm to feel like medicine. Tough love. "You were coming home to a fresh start," Mom said. "We didn't want reminders of that life around you." "That life?" Dad finally spoke. "Laura, don't make this harder than it has to be." I almost laughed. I had spent 32 days in treatment, learning to sit with shame without drowning in it. Learning to say I had a substance use disorder without turning myself into a monster. Learning that accountability and humiliation were not the same. Learning that recovery required safety, structure, honesty, and boundaries. I had come home prepared to apologize. Prepared to rebuild trust. Prepared to accept rules. I had not prepared to find my family had erased my room and called it love. I walked into the closet. There was one plastic hanger left. One. It swung slightly from the rod, empty, moving in the air like a small accusation. I touched it. Where? Mom blinked. What? Where did you donate them? Brianna said, Hope House Charity Center. I turned. All of it? Most of it. My documents? Mom frowned. What documents? My medical papers, my therapy folder, my insurance forms, my journals. Dad's face changed. Brianna looked away. My stomach tightened. What box? No one answered. What box had my papers? Brianna crossed her arms. Well, maybe you should have organized your things before you left. I looked at her. I left for rehab, Brianna, not vacation. She flinched, but only for a second. Then she lifted her chin. You don't get to come back and act like the victim. My mother whispered, We were trying to save you. No, I said quietly. You were trying to make my recovery look clean for you. That was when my phone rang. Unknown number, I almost ignored it. Then something in me said answer. I stepped away from them and pressed the phone to my ear. Hello? A woman's voice said, Hi, may I speak with Laura Simmons? This is Laura. My name is Ruth Alvarez. I'm the intake coordinator at Hope House Charity Center. My breath stopped. I'm calling because a donation box came in with several items that appeared to contain private medical and therapy documents. Your name and phone number were on one of the forms. I closed my eyes. Behind me, my family went very still. Then Ruth continued, And Laura, I think you should know something else. Dr. Helen Morris is here volunteering today. She recognized your name. Dr. Helen Morris, my therapist, the woman who had guided my family session 2 weeks earlier and told my parents, very clearly, that recovery was not punishment, privacy mattered, and my return home needed stability, not symbolic cleansing. My therapist was at the charity center. My private documents were in a donated box, and the people who had called it tough love had just created a paper trail. I looked at my mother, then my father, then Brianna. I said into the phone, Please don't release anything to anyone. I'm on my way. Mom stepped forward. Laura, wait. I held up one hand. No. Her face crumpled. Dad said, We can fix this. I looked around the empty room. No, I said. You can explain it. This is that story. Before I tell you how my family learned that donating a recovering person's belongings is not love, and that private documents do not become trash because relatives are uncomfortable with shame, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment someone hurt you and called it help. And if you connect with stories about women who were blamed, erased, underestimated, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not scream in an empty bedroom. Some women let the therapist at the charity center make the call. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a family that cared deeply about appearances and called it concern. My father, Paul Simmons, owned a small auto parts store with his brother. He believed problems should be handled privately, quickly, and preferably before anyone from church heard about them. My mother, Denise, was a medical receptionist who knew how to sound compassionate on the phone and terrified in real life when compassion required her to sit with something messy. My sister, Brianna, was 3 years younger than me and had always been better at performing wellness than practicing kindness. She taught yoga part-time, sold skincare online, posted quotes about boundaries, and used the language of healing the way some people use perfume, heavily and mostly for others to notice. I was the oldest, the responsible one first, then the struggling one, then the problem. That sequence matters. Because my family did not always see me as broken. For years, they saw me as useful. I got good grades, helped Mom with errands, covered shifts at Dad's store when someone called in sick, drove Brianna to dance practice, paid my own way through community college, then finished a business degree at a state university while working part-time at a dental office. I was not wild. I was not dramatic. I was not careless. I was tired. That is where my addiction began. Not in some movie-style collapse. In exhaustion. A back injury from a car accident at 25. Pain medication after surgery. Then refills. Then anxiety when the refills stopped. then pills from a friend of a friend, then lying, then shame, then more lying to cover the shame, then drinking to sleep, then drinking not to feel the panic of needing pills, then a life that looked functional from a distance and frightening up close. Substance use disorder does not always announce itself by destroying everything at once. Sometimes it rearranges your life quietly until every decision is made around not getting sick, not being exposed, not feeling too much, not losing the thread. I lost jobs, then found smaller ones, lost friends, then blamed schedules, missed birthdays, then apologized too much, borrowed money, then avoided eye contact. My family responded the way many families do, when fear meets pride. They alternated between rescue and resentment. Mom cried. Dad yelled, "Brianna diagnosed me from Instagram." "You're addicted to chaos," she said once. I said, "I'm addicted to substances, actually. Accuracy might help." She did not appreciate that. The symbolic object in this story was my grandmother's silver locket. Grandma Ruth gave it to me when I was 16. It had belonged to her mother. Small oval, engraved with tiny flowers, with a photo of Grandma and me inside from a summer picnic when I was missing 2 teeth and holding a melted popsicle. She told me, "When you feel lost, hold something that remembers you before the world got loud." During my worst year, I pawned too many things. I did not pawn the locket. It sat in my jewelry box through everything: hospital visits, relapses, apologies, detox attempts. The night I finally called the treatment center, I was sitting on my bedroom floor holding that locket so tightly the edge left a mark in my palm. I called because I had scared myself. That is the honest reason. Not because my family staged an intervention. Not because I had one perfect moment of clarity. Because I woke up after mixing pills and alcohol, could not remember part of the night before, and saw a text from my niece that said, "Aunt Laura, are you coming to my recital?" I had missed it. Again. I looked at that message and realized I had become a person children learned not to count on. That broke me more than my parents' anger ever had. The rehab facility was called Cedar Lake Recovery. 32 days. Medical detox first. Then, residential treatment. Group therapy. Individual therapy. Family systems work. Relapse prevention planning. Medication management. Sleep that came slowly. Shame that came loudly. Recovery is not inspirational when you're inside it. It is uncomfortable, boring, humiliating, tender, repetitive, and sometimes the first honest thing you have done in years. I met Dr. Helen Morris on day 4. She was not soft in the way I expected therapists to be. She had silver hair cut to her chin, dark glasses, and a voice that could make denial sit up straighter. In our first session, I told her, "My family thinks I'm weak." She said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think I hurt people." That was not my question. I cried. She waited. I said, "I think I'm afraid if I stop hating myself, I'll become selfish." She wrote something down. Interesting. Who taught you accountability requires self-hatred? That question took 2 weeks to answer. My family session happened on day 18. Mom, Dad, and Brianna came. They sat on the couch across from me and Dr. Morris. Mom cried before anyone spoke. Dad looked stiff. Brianna brought a notebook, which scared me. Dr. Morris began. Today is not about listing Laura's failures. She is already aware she is in treatment. Today is about what support and boundaries look like after discharge. Dad said, "We don't want to enable her." "Good," Dr. Morris said. "Then we should define enable." Brianna jumped in. "It means not making things comfortable for her." Dr. Morris looked at her. "No. Enabling means protecting someone from the natural consequences of their substance use in a way that allows the pattern to continue. It does not mean removing dignity, privacy, clothing, or safety." Brianna's pen paused. Mom sniffed. Dr. Morris continued. "Laura will need structure. Clear expectations. No substances in the home. Transportation to outpatient treatment if needed. privacy around medical documents, a stable sleeping space, respectful communication. You may set boundaries, you may not punish her, and call it treatment. I remember looking at my mother when Dr. Morris said that. Mom looked down. Dad asked, "What about her room?" "What about it?" Dr. Morris asked. "There are things in there, from before." "What kind of things?" He shifted. "Clothes, old papers, maybe reminders." Dr. Morris said, "Do not remove Laura's belongings without her consent. If there are substances or dangerous items, contact the treatment team for guidance. But clothing, journals, personal items, documents, those are not yours to purge." Brianna said, "But fresh starts matter." Dr. Morris looked at her. "Fresh starts chosen by the person in recovery can matter. Forced erasure by relatives often creates shame, instability, and distrust." That sentence was clear. No one could claim they had not been told. After the session, Mom hugged me. Dad said, "We want you home." Brianna said, "I hope you're ready to do the work." I was. I did not know they were doing their own. The week before discharge, I made a plan. Outpatient therapy 3 times a week, medication-assisted support with the doctor, recovery group meetings, no driving at night for the first month, daily check-ins, job search delayed for 30 days, financial review with Dad present but not controlling. I asked if I could return to my bedroom at my parents' house temporarily while I stabilized. Dad said yes. Mom said, "Of course." Brianna said nothing. That should have warned me. On discharge day, Dr. Morris handed me a folder. Inside were my plan, medication schedule, emergency contacts, outpatient appointments, coping tools, consent forms, and a sheet titled, "Family Support is Not Family Control." She tapped that one. "Keep this visible." I smiled weakly. "You think I'll need it?" "I think everyone needs reminders when fear starts acting confident." She was right. When I came home and found my room empty, the folder became less a reminder than evidence. Hope House Charity Center sat on the east side of town, attached to a small church building with a thrift shop, food pantry, clothing closet, and counseling referral desk. I had donated there before, during better years, coats, office clothes, books, never my own life. My father drove me because I was shaking too hard to drive. Mom insisted on coming. Brianna came too, though I think only because she wanted to control the story. No one spoke in the car. At the charity center, Ruth Alvarez met us near the intake desk. She was in her 60s, with kind eyes and the alert posture of a woman who had seen many families confuse generosity with disposal. "Laura?" she asked. "Yes." "I'm glad you came quickly." Behind her, Dr. Morris stood near a table with 3 cardboard boxes. "My therapist, not at the clinic, here." In jeans, a gray sweater, and the same steady expression she wore when someone in group therapy tried to intellectualize a relapse trigger. She looked at me first. Not at my family. "Laura," she said softly, "are you safe right now?" I almost cried from that question alone. "Yes." "Do you want me present while we sort this?" "Yes." Mom made a small sound. Dr. Morris turned to her. "Mrs. Simmons will speak in a moment." Mom closed her mouth. "Good," Ruth explained. "The boxes were dropped off this morning. Volunteers began sorting. One box contained clothing, but underneath were folders with medical records, therapy worksheets, insurance documents, and what appear to be journals. Because we saw private information, we stopped processing immediately." "Thank you," I said. My voice shook. Ruth nodded. "We take privacy seriously." Dr. Morris added, "I was here for my monthly volunteer shift." Ruth showed me the name on the documents and asked whether I could assist without breaching confidentiality. I told her only that I knew how to contact you and that the box should be secured. Brianna crossed her arms. "This is being blown out of proportion." Dr. Morris looked at her. "No, it is being contained before the harm becomes worse." Brianna flushed. Dad looked at the boxes. "Can we just take them back?" Ruth said, "Laura can take her belongings. We will need to document that private documents were donated without apparent consent." Mom whispered, "Document?" "Yes," Ruth said. That word landed like a gavel. "Document." My family loved informal harm. They did not love formal records. I stepped toward the boxes. The first contained clothes. My black blazer. 3 sweaters. Jeans. My running shoes. A winter coat. Underwear in a plastic grocery bag, which somehow humiliated me more than the rest. The second held books, framed photos, my diploma, the ceramic fox wrapped in a towel, and the jewelry box from Grandma. I opened it with trembling hands. The locket was still inside. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. For one bright second, nothing else mattered. I held the locket in both hands and cried. Not pretty tears, not dramatic. Relief tears, the kind your body releases when one sacred thing survives. Mom started crying too. Laura, I didn't know that was in there. I looked up. You didn't look. She flinched. The third box contained my documents, medical records, insurance forms, therapy worksheets, a recovery journal, a letter I had written to myself in rehab and was supposed to open on day 90. I picked it up. Unopened. Thank God. Brianna said, I didn't read your journals. I turned to her. That is not the favor you think it is. Dad put a hand over his mouth. Dr. Morris stepped closer. Who packed these boxes? Silence. Ruth looked from face to face. Mom whispered, we all helped. Brianna said, I did most of the room. Dad said, we thought removing triggers. Dr. Morris interrupted. I was explicit in family session. You were not to remove Laura's belongings without consent. You were not to donate private documents. You were not to erase her room as a symbolic recovery gesture. Mom's face crumpled. We were scared. Yes, Dr. Morris said, fear does not grant ownership. Brianna snapped. You don't know what it was like living with her addiction. Dr. Morris stayed calm. You are correct. I do not know your full experience. You may have legitimate pain, anger, and boundaries. You still do not have the right to violate her privacy or remove her belongings. Brianna's eyes filled. She ruined everything for years. I closed mine. There it was. Not tough love, punishment. Dr. Morris said gently, then say that. Say you are angry. Say you are hurt. Say you need boundaries. Do not disguise retaliation as treatment. Brianna looked away. Ruth handed me a form listing recovered private items. She asked me to initial each section. Clothing. Personal items. Documents. Jewelry. Medical paperwork. Journals. I signed. My hand shook, but I signed. Then Ruth said, there were additional boxes already processed before this was discovered. We can try to locate items, but some clothing may already be on the floor or distributed. I looked at my mother. What did you donate? She covered her mouth. Dad said, Laura. What did you donate? Brianna said, clothes, mostly, shoes, some bedding, old makeup, bags, things you didn't need. My interview dress? No answer. My grandmother's cardigan? Mom whispered, I'm not sure. My photo albums. Dad looked at Brianna. Brianna said, I thought digital photos exist. I stared at her. Grandma's letters? Silence. The room blurred. Dr. Morris stepped beside me. Breathe, Laura. I did. In, out. Not because I was calm. Because I refused to let them turn my pain into proof I was unstable. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever had someone violate your space, then act shocked that you reacted like a person with a self, you know exactly what Laura felt in that charity center. Recovery does not mean surrendering privacy. Accountability does not mean accepting humiliation. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me when someone called punishment help and expected you to thank them for it. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. Dr. Morris asked me whether I wanted to continue sorting or step outside. I said continue. One by one, we identified what could be recovered. The winter coat, 2 sweaters, a box of documents, the jewelry box, the diploma, the ceramic fox, some shoes, a few books. My blue dress was already on the sales floor. Ruth sent a volunteer to pull it. My grandmother's cardigan had been placed in a donation bag for the women's shelter. Ruth found it before pickup. The letters were gone. At least, we thought they were. For 47 minutes, I believed the letters Grandma wrote me over the years had disappeared into the donation stream because my sister thought digital photos existed. Then a volunteer named Jamie came from the back, carrying a shoebox. "Is this yours?" she asked. Inside were envelopes tied with faded ribbon. My knees almost gave out. I whispered, "Yes." Jamie said, "They were in a purse. We almost priced it." I pressed the letters against my chest. "Thank you." Brianna began crying then. Quietly, maybe because she understood, maybe because she felt accused by the survival of the evidence. I did not care. By the end, 2 boxes had been restored. Some items remained missing. Ruth promised to keep searching and call if anything else turned up. Then drive. Morris asked if we could use a private office. Ruth gave us one. Small room. Round table. 4 chairs. A poster about food pantry hours on the wall. I sat beside Dr. Morris. Not my family. That was a choice. Mom cried into a tissue. Dad looked 10 years older. Brianna stared at the floor. Dr. Morris began. "Laura, do you want to speak first?" I looked at my family. I thought of the empty room, the hanger, the locket, the documents, the phrase "tough love." Yes. My voice was quiet. "I went to treatment because I wanted to live differently. I know I hurt all of you. I know my addiction caused fear, anger, embarrassment, and broken trust. I am not denying that." Mom sobbed, I continued. "But while I was in rehab, you went into my room, packed my belongings, donated my clothes, personal items, medical records, therapy documents, journals, and grandmother's letters without my consent. You called it tough love. It was not love. It was punishment." Dad closed his eyes. "You were told by Dr. Morris not to do this. You did it anyway. That means it was not confusion. It was a choice." Brianna looked up, tears on her cheeks. "You don't understand what it was like for us." I nodded. "You are right. I don't fully. But today is not about whether you suffered. Today is about what you did with that suffering." She started crying harder. "Good. Some tears need to stop being weapons and start becoming information." Mom whispered, "I thought if the room was clean, it would help you feel new." I looked at her. My room did not feel clean. It felt like I died and you cleared me out. She covered her mouth. Dad said, "Laura." "No, you need to hear that. I came home from rehab and felt like my family had practiced living without me." That sentence changed the room. Even Brianna stopped crying. Dr. Morris let the silence work. Then she said, "What needs to happen next?" I had learned this in treatment. Not just what happened, what now? I took a breath. "I am not returning to the house today." Mom looked panicked. "What?" "I need somewhere stable, and right now that house is not safe for me emotionally." Dad said, "Where will you go?" "I'll call my outpatient coordinator. I'll ask about sober living or transitional housing." Mom cried, "You don't have to do that. Come home. We'll fix your room." "No, you emptied my room. You cannot repaint trust by tonight." Dad flinched. I continued, "I need all remaining items returned to me by Sunday. Anything missing must be listed. You will not enter, move, donate, dispose of, read, photograph, or share anything of mine again. You will not discuss my treatment details with relatives, church friends, or online. You will not call this tough love." Brianna said, "So we're the villains now." Dr. Morris looked at her. "Brianna, if you make this about whether you are a villain, you will miss the opportunity to be accountable." Brianna swallowed. I said, "I want apologies. Not today if you can't do them honestly, but eventually. Specific apologies." Dad nodded slowly. "Okay?" Mom nodded too, crying. Brianna looked away. I expected that. Dr. Morris helped me call my outpatient coordinator. By evening, I had a bed arranged at a women's recovery residence for 30 days with the option to extend. It was not glamorous. Shared kitchen. Small room. Rules. Curfew. Required meetings. It felt safer than my mother's house. Dad drove me there in silence. Mom wanted to come. I said no. Brianna did not ask. At the recovery residence, a woman named Tanya showed me to my room. Twin bed. Dresser. Small desk. Window facing a parking lot. Nothing beautiful. Everything mine, while I was there. I placed Grandma's locket in the top drawer. Then the letters. Then the ceramic fox on the desk. I sat on the bed and cried until my body hurt. Not because I wanted pills. That surprised me. I wanted my room back. I wanted my family to have been different. I wanted my recovery to begin with being welcomed home, not inventory forms at a charity center. I called Daniel, my friend from treatment, not a romantic Daniel, just Daniel, a man in group who had said once, "Families love the idea of recovery until they realize it includes their behavior too." He answered, "They did what?" I told him. He was quiet, then said, "Do you need me to talk you out of using?" I breathed, "No." "Good. Do you need me to be angry with you?" "Yes." He said, "I am furious." That helped. Recovery is strange. Sometimes the most healing thing is another person agreeing that something was wrong. The next days were hard. Harder than detox in some ways. Because physical withdrawal had been honest. This was emotional. My family wanted immediate repair. Mom sent long texts. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I was scared. Please come home. We love you." I replied once. "I am safe. I need space. Please communicate through Dr. Morris for now." Dad sent a list of recovered items by Sunday. He was thorough. Clothes recovered. Partial. Shoes. Partial. Documents recovered. Jewelry box recovered. Letters recovered. Bedding missing. 2 handbags missing. Black boots missing. Some books missing. Interview dress recovered. Grandma cardigan recovered. He added, "I will reimburse anything not found." I replied, "This is not only about replacement cost." He wrote, "I know." That was the first decent answer. Brianna sent nothing for 9 days, then a voicemail. I listened while sitting at the recovery resident's desk. Her voice was flat at first. "Laura, Dr. Morris said I should only call if I can be specific, so I'm trying." Long pause. "I packed most of your room. Mom couldn't handle it, and Dad was angry, so I did it. I told myself I was helping because I wanted the house to feel different when you came back. But I was angry. I was angry about the money you borrowed, the Christmas you missed, the lies, the way Mom cried, the way Dad yelled, the way everything became about whether you were okay." Another pause. "I wanted you to come home and see what it felt like to lose things." I stopped breathing for a second. There it was. Not tough love, revenge. Brianna continued, voice breaking now. "That was cruel. I donated your clothes and journals and papers because I wanted control. I'm sorry for violating your privacy. I'm sorry for touching Grandma's letters. I'm sorry for calling it old energy when it was your life. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it right." The voicemail ended. I sat there for a long time. Then I saved it. Not to use against her. To remember that truth had finally entered the room. Mom and Dad's apology happened in Dr. Morris's office 2 weeks later. I agreed to one family session. Neutral ground, chairs arranged in a circle, tissue box on the table. No donation boxes. Mom spoke first. She had written notes. "I am sorry for going into your room while you were in treatment. I am sorry for donating your clothes, personal items, documents, and grandmother's things without your permission. I am sorry for calling it tough love when it was fear and shame. I am sorry I cared more about making the room look clean than making sure you felt safe." She cried, but kept reading. "I am also sorry for telling Aunt Carol you were in treatment without asking you. That was not my story to share." I closed my eyes. I had not even known that yet. Pain added itself calmly to the pile. Dad spoke next. "I am sorry for letting anger make me careless with your belongings. I told myself anything from before treatment was dangerous. That was an excuse. Your papers, clothes, photos, journals, and Grandma's letters were not drugs. They were yours. I am sorry I did not protect your privacy. I am sorry I made you feel like we had cleared you out." He swallowed. "I'm sorry for calling you selfish when you said you weren't coming home. You were protecting yourself." That mattered. Brianna came last. She did not bring notes. "I already left you a voicemail, but I want to say it to your face. I wanted to punish you. I thought if you hurt, maybe you'd understand what we felt. But I chose something cruel because I knew your room mattered. I'm sorry." I looked at her. "Thank you for telling the truth." She cried, "I hate that truth." "Good." Dr. Morris said nothing. She did not need to. We discussed boundaries. I would not move home. I would stay at recovery residence for at least 60 days. Family visits only with notice. No discussion of my treatment with extended family. No touching my belongings. No surprise. Help. No using recovery language as a weapon. Mom asked, "Can we bring your things to the residence?" "No," I said. "Dad can bring sealed boxes to Dr. Morris's office. I'll sort them there." Mom looked hurt, then nodded. Good. Trust is not restored by the person who broke it choosing the delivery method. Over the next 2 months, I built a life in small pieces. Morning meetings. Outpatient therapy. Medication appointments. Part-time work at a bookstore 3 days a week. Laundry on Sundays. Walks after dinner. A recovery group where no one flinched when I said what had happened. One woman, Tasha, said, "My sister threw away all my makeup when I got sober because she said vanity was a trigger. People love to baptize control." I wrote that down. People love to baptize control. Yes. Hope House found more of my belongings. A pair of boots. 2 books. A framed photo. Not everything. Enough to remind me loss can be partial and still hurt. Ruth Alvarez called personally each time. When I picked up the last recovered item, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a gift card for the thrift store and a note. "Laura, your belongings should never have arrived here without your consent. I am sorry our center became part of that harm. We are grateful we could help protect your documents. Please choose anything you need with dignity. Ruth." I cried in my car. Dignity. That word kept returning. My family had thought recovery meant stripping me down to shame and calling the emptiness fresh. Ruth understood that dignity was part of survival. 3 months after discharge, I moved into a small studio apartment. Mine. 2nd floor. Bad water pressure. Good light. I bought a bed from Facebook Marketplace, a small table, 2 chairs, thrift store dishes, and a blue rug. The first night, I placed Grandma's letters in the closet, the locket in the top drawer, and the ceramic fox on the windowsill. Then I closed the door. My door. No one else had a key. Mom visited 2 weeks later. She stood in the doorway with a covered dish and asked, "May I come in?" May I? That mattered. Yes. She looked around. "It's peaceful." "I'm trying." She placed the dish on the counter. "I made soup. You don't have to eat it." I smiled slightly. "Thank you." She sat at the table. "I told Aunt Carol I shared something I shouldn't have, and that if she asks you anything about treatment, she'll answer to me." That surprised me. "Thank you." "I also told the church prayer group that your health is private." I lifted an eyebrow. She flushed. "I know, late." "Very." She nodded. "I'm learning privacy is not secrecy." That sounded like Dr. Morris. Good. Dad helped me install shelves, he asked before touching boxes. Every time. "Can I move this?" "Do you want this opened?" "Is this okay here?" It was awkward. It was also repair. One afternoon, while drilling a bracket into the wall, he said, "I was so afraid you'd die that I treated your life like something we could pack up and control." I handed him a screw. "I was afraid too." He nodded. I should have said that instead. Yes. Brianna took longer. We met for coffee 6 months after the donation day. She looked different, less polished. No inspirational necklace. No wellness tote. Just jeans, tired eyes, and honesty, maybe. "I started therapy," she said. "I'm glad." "I hate it." "That's usually how you know it's working." She smiled faintly, then said, "I unfollowed half the accounts that taught me to call my anger boundaries." I almost laughed. "Good." She looked at me. "I found one more thing." She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a photo of me and Grandma in her garden. I was 12, holding tomatoes in both hands, grinning. "It fell behind my dresser," Brianna said. "I think it was stuck to one of your boxes when I packed." I held the photo carefully. "Thank you." Her eyes filled. "I almost didn't give it to you because I was ashamed." "But you did." "Yes." "That matters." She nodded. "I don't expect us to be okay." "We're not." "I know. But this is better than pretending." She wiped her face. Yeah. We sat there with coffee cooling between us, sisters, but not repaired. Alive, though. Both of us. That was something. A year has passed since I came home to the empty room. I am still sober. 1 year, 2 months, and 11 days as I speak these words. I say that carefully, because recovery is not a trophy case. It is a daily practice. I still have hard days. I still have cravings sometimes. I still have shame show up like an old creditor. I still go to meetings. I still call people before my brain starts rewriting danger as relief. But I have a life now. A real one. Small, steady, mine. I work full-time at the bookstore and started taking classes in nonprofit administration. Hope House hired me part-time to help organize their donation privacy protocols after Ruth suggested I would be good at seeing gaps. Imagine that. The charity center where my life was almost scattered became one of the places I helped protect other people's dignity. We created a policy. Any donated box containing documents, medications, IDs, medical records, journals, legal papers, or personal photos must be paused, sealed, logged, and reviewed by a supervisor before processing. When possible, the owner is contacted. Donations are not assumed to be intentional just because someone else dropped them off. Ruth said, "You turned harm into procedure." I said, "That sounds like something Dr. Morris would say." She smiled. "It sounds like someone who knows why procedure matters." My family is still complicated. Mom asks before sharing anything about me. Dad checks in every Wednesday and does not ask whether I am still doing good, which used to make me feel like sobriety was a performance review. Now he asks, "How was your week?" Brianna and I are careful. She sometimes slips into therapy language, then catches herself. Once she said, "I feel triggered by," then stopped and said, "No, I'm angry. That's the word." Progress. We had Thanksgiving together this year, at my apartment, not my parents' house. I invited them because I wanted to, not because they assumed. Before dinner, Mom looked at the small shelf where I keep Grandma's locket, the ceramic fox, and one framed photo. She said, "I'm glad these came back to you." I said, "Me too." Brianna whispered, "I'm sorry they ever left." I nodded. No speech, no tears. Just the truth allowed to sit at the table without stealing the meal. The final lesson is not that families of people in recovery do not suffer. They do. Addiction hurts more than the person using. It breaks trust, drains money, scares children, exhausts parents, and leaves siblings carrying anger they do not know where to put. But suffering does not give relatives the right to erase someone. Treatment is not permission to raid a bedroom. Recovery is not a public relations project. Tough love is not donating clothes, journals, medical documents, letters, and identity. Accountability is not humiliation. My family donated my clothes while I was in rehab. They forgot my therapist was at the charity center. And when the call came, when my private documents were secured, when Dr. Morris looked my family in the eyes and said fear does not grant ownership, the story finally changed. I was not a pile of old energy. I was not a problem to be cleared out. I was a person coming home from treatment with a chance to live. And that chance needed dignity, more than it needed bleach. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have had family call control love, punishment support, humiliation, accountability, and privacy secrecy. If Laura's story reached you, I hope you remember that recovery does not make you less deserving of respect. Your belongings are yours. Your documents are yours. Your story is yours. You can make amends without accepting erasure. You can rebuild without letting anyone strip you down to shame. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the moment the right person finds the evidence before it disappears. So tell me, if your family donated your clothes and private documents while you were in rehab and called it tough love, would you move back home to keep the peace? Or would you let the therapist, the charity center, and the paperwork help you draw the line?